like a flat Native American eagle. Even cooler. I'm sure that American spirit was started by Native Americans. I'm surprised that hasn't been like. Has there been like has that been like something that people? I don't really pay enough attention to. Well, no, actually, I paid the perfect amount of attention to social media. Very little. I'm surprised people haven't like objected to that, because you know why?
What?
Because that's like, you know, I think there's a large overlap. I bet a lot of people who, well, never mind, I'm going to go down that. That's boring.
I think it was started by Native Americans, or by a Native American.
In like 1899 or something?
Yeah, why not?
That's probably true. Probably like in So for the audience,
You know you're doing something wrong.
you know what this is?
You know.
No, dude, this is like probably like fucking Sitting Bull or something put like a curse on this company, and like the first person to bring this up in the year 2021 deserved to have ash fall in their goddamn you know. You know what? I have to drink it now. That's the only way to dispel the curse.
Well, cheers.
I hope it's not bad for me. I hope it's less bad for my digestive system than it is for my lungs.
Well, it's, I mean, just the same elemental compound of drinking or eating like charred meat, you know, the carbon.
Oh, it's terrible for you. Carcinogens.
Oh, it is? But,
Yeah, anything charred is bad.
But it tastes good.
Okay, that is due to evolutionary psychology. That is due to an evolutionary trade-off, because it turns out that
Because your body knows the germs are gone.
yes, eating pathogens will kill you faster than stomach cancer. And therefore evolution goes, you know what, I'm willing to take that deal. You go ahead and like the taste of charred things, because we know that on average you're going to survive more if you char the shit out of everything you eat than if you don't. It doesn't mean it's good for you. Because I think like the chemical reactions, when something burns, there's high energy bonds that are created amongst certain molecules from the heat energy, and then when your body, you know, those become like free radicals in your system that, you know, damage your nuclear material. But, you know, hey, what are you going to do?
Smoke a filtered cigarette, I guess.
Yeah. I want there to be like some kind of, man, if there was a nicotine delivery mechanism.
There is.
I know there are. I was going to say that isn't fucking lame. Like, I'm not going to like be like, oh, sitting down for my podcast, let's go ahead and put on my nicotine patch. This is so cool. I don't want to live in that world.
But you don't want to live in the world of hand-rolled cigarettes either. The first 30 minutes of our podcast.
Just talking about cigarettes. Yeah, we're going to get a lot of viewers. We're going to be sponsored by Americans.
That would be so sick. I would love that.
They don't need it.
Maybe, no, they don't. But they would. They seem like a hip enough company that they would do it.
Maybe. What the fuck did I do with that lighter? Here it is.
Okay.
Anyways.
So, what do you want to talk about first?
Well, I had a thought this morning about unconscious action. I was having a conversation yesterday about how somehow it came up, we were talking about, I guess, motivations and stuff. And it occurred to me that a lot of the good things in my life have happened by accident. But when I really think about it, with the benefit of hindsight, I realize that it's not really an accident. The decisions I was making were totally in line with what I wanted, but I didn't know it or couldn't admit it or something, but it nonetheless benefited me. So it's kind of like the flip side of that idea, that Jungian idea, that if you have something in your unconscious, it has more power over you. And, it's very obvious that bad things, like let's say insecurities about yourself or something, if you're not conscious of them, can have power over you and negatively affect your life because you don't have the things you're unaware of have more power over you, right? There's like that Jungian idea. But I was thinking, well, what about like good things? Like, what about like things that you like, like things that are like courageous elements in you that if you thought about them too much, you might talk yourself out of it. But if you don't think about it, you just end up doing it. And then later on, you're like, wow, I'm glad I just did that and didn't think about it too much. I don't know, a lot of things like that have been that way for me. Is that in hindsight, I look back and I go like, past Stuart didn't know what the fuck he was doing, but he ended up kind of doing the right thing because he just was really unconscientious and just like stumbled through life and like stumbled into something good.
Well, you need both.
Yeah, the problem is you can't disentangle. Like if you start digging around, you're gonna find everything. And then you're gonna either get good things or bad things, and then you're gonna run the risk of throwing away good things. You're gonna throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like, because I'm not sure, like, if you have the ability to recognize sometimes what elements of your unconscious are working for you.
It's, okay. It's mainly necessary to examine your unconscious assumptions when something goes wrong. Until then, things are going right, and in areas where your life is going right,
don't fuck with it.
Don't mess with something that isn't broken.
Yeah.
But still, you can bootstrap that unconscious superpower you have in whatever given area you're gotta.
The fuck is this? Dude, if this is one of those mosquito spraying trucks or
mosquito spraying truck?
Or no, I think it's a street sweeper. They sound the same.
Why are we bringing a street sweeper into Bidwell Park?
Because the government hates Serenity.
You thought Timothée Chalamet did a great job as Paul.
Yeah.
Atreides.
Yeah.
And that's one thing you liked about the movie.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was. There was definitely a lot of. There's definitely a lot of pop culture elements that were smuggled into the making of that movie.
Yes.
But it didn't like. There was parts of it that made me think like, okay, this is like there was certain like things like little like like phrases or something that people would say, or like certain like it's like there was some like kind of like casual modern pop culture elements that were brought up that were like part of that movie that I feel like that little bit clashed with the vibe of Dune, but by and large it was. I walked out of there going like, "Wow, that was cool." I'm like, look forward to the next one. But I think, like I said before, I don't have like that sophisticated of a take on movies. I don't know. I don't think I go into it with the same critical lens.
I think that it's partly you haven't been transported and had like a sacred experience with cinema before.
Maybe.
As I have, and I hold cinema up to a very high standard because, like all art, it has the ability to heal one's soul. And if you know it has that power, and you know you have that power to make that, then things that break that spell, I get pretty angry about. That movie was fucking terrible.
There we go. I knew it.
We don't need to talk about it.
All right. Yeah.
I've done my Dune work this month.
Yeah. Didn't you do a thing with Jade on it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool.
We Duned it up.
You guys covered it
to the nth degree. Not much.
Right.
Else needs to be said about that travesty. So the conscious mind, I think you can bootstrap the parts of your life that are where your unconscious is working really well for your conscious purposes. And so don't fix what's not broken. But on the other hand, I do think you can make things work even better by asking yourself, why does this work so well? What are the unconscious processes that are helping me be so naturally talented in this area?
Sure.
consciously articulating it, there's no reason not to do that, provided that's like where you're feeling inspired to think about things next.
Yeah.
If you were trying to keep it unconscious and never articulate it, then that's like the fear that there won't be any more change if you like open up the box and see what makes the thing. You're afraid that the magic will be gone, which isn't real. The magic is constantly replenishing.
Yeah, like there's like the well of things that if you know, you can draw from the well, but like if you believe that the well has it's
bottom.
like a bottom, yeah, like there's going to be more things that if you integrate the unconscious, there's just going to be more unconscious things. That's true, certainly true. I guess maybe my attraction to this idea of unconscious action is more of like a kind of just like an aesthetic, like I like almost just the act of having faith in your unconscious is kind of a nice thing to just kind of like pay respect to, almost like it's like a way of acting out trust in yourself by going, you know, this is what I want. I don't really know why I want it, but I'm just gonna trust that I want this for a good reason and just not question it. Like whether, you know, like if you, for example, like wanted to not have a job and do your own thing, you know, you could dig into that and be like, well, maybe it's because I'm a lazy fuck, or maybe it's because I'm a great self-inspired, you know, someone who wants to do my own thing. It's like, well, you don't really know. Maybe it's better, like, you could examine that and figure it out and then make a decision, or you could just not and roll the dice and hope for the best.
Well, thinking,
you know?
Thinking is a process of physical action. We are not brains in a vat. We are physical bodies on planet Earth. So if we're going to think about something, we have to act on physical materials and think about it, and then reflect on it once it's in the past. We have to do all those things.
So you're saying trying to like not think of action and thinking as like separate things, but they're part of the same thought action, almost like, or I don't know what the word for it would be, like life.
Every action is a thought. Every action and every project and every like physical creation is
interesting.
Is a thought.
It's easier to see that thoughts are actions than it is to see that actions are thoughts.
But they are.
Yeah, sure.
The unconscious is like, your prompt was like leaving certain things unconscious, not dogmatically thinking it's always better to bring everything in the unconscious into the daylight of the conscious mind.
Yeah. I was trying to bring out that idea, that thing, as like a kind of for skepticism, because I feel like that's one of those central things that we always talk about, is the benefit of making the unconscious conscious, and that we're you know, that's one of the central ideas that always finds our way into this, is that you have to excavate your unconscious. And I was just, you know, I think it's good to be skeptical of like your main premises sometimes, and just think like, what's the flip side to this? Because there's a certain tension there that sometimes the most magical things that happen to me are things that feel like serendipity in the moment, and then in the future they seem inevitable based on my newfound realization about what my actual like thoughts and motivations were that were kind of like obscured to me in the moment of action.
I know there's an example of what you're saying in songwriting, where sometimes I need to think about everything really clearly and know exactly why every piece and what every piece represents and how it fits into my life, and complete, clear Aristotelian explanation of the entire art piece before it's even made.
Yeah.
But then there's other times where, and there's just a feeling to it that discerns which attitude is appropriate. But the feeling speaks up sometimes for other pieces of art, other songs, where I am being asked by the song to treat it very gently and let pieces of it remain in the unconscious and let pieces of it go unquestioned for now, because it's still like being dreamed, and to try and like step into the middle of that while it's still dreaming itself is gonna get in the way of the part my unconscious has to play in making that piece of art. It's still like growing, like a sprout under the ground. Like, it's not going to be helped by you digging up all the dirt around the sprout and putting the right fucking like chemical composition of nutrients all around it. It's like, no, it just needs to be invisible under the ground still, and it'll tell you when it's ready for conscious action.
Yeah.
And the only conscious action it needs until then is your conscious affirmation that, like, this is dope and it's gonna be dope, and so I can not worry about it or not think about it.
The hunter-gatherer mode of creativity as opposed to the farmer mode of creativity.
And with art, it's especially appropriate attitude what you're speaking to, because one definition of art is creating something or articulating a thought that you do not understand yet and that no one understands yet, and that's why you have to make something novel that is a piece of art, because it's something conscious thought has never gotten to before. So like, you're discovering it as you're creating it, and you need to let the process of discovery and dreaming be acting on it just as much as your conscious mind and your conscious problem solving. The issue is, like, my dogmatic iteration and reiteration of individuation and consciousizing your life and making everything in your unconscious consciously articulatable is in response to people's refusal to make things conscious. And like, the unconscious is constantly trying to tell you what it's ready to have exposed to the conscious mind next. Like, things are coming up there, and it's trying to tell you what to look at next. And it's not about all the things that aren't ready to present themselves to your waking mind yet. It's about the things that are ready, but you have some, like, fear of your unconscious or fear of yourself or a basic instability about physical reality that, like, something comes up and you just quell it, you just quash it down. If there's doors inside you that you do not want to open, or like doors you're fucking closing, then something's going wrong there. Because why did that door open itself in the first place? It's like something's ready to be examined there.
You know what my main reason for not wanting to open doors is? Just realized it's because I don't want to have too much on my plate at once.
I know, you always say this.
Do I? Well, okay, well, I don't remember that I always say this, but I'm glad that you remember, because it makes me more sure of it, that if it's something that I've said before in the spirit of this unconscious thing. Yeah, so I don't know, I just fucking want to, I don't want to overwhelm myself with, like, I mean, that's the reason why I don't trip mushrooms all the time. It's because I'm like, Jesus, I already have enough shit to think about. Do I need more things to think about? Like, I used to think that maybe, like, this was something that was, like, represented a kind of, like, fear in me that I didn't want to like look in, like I didn't want to, and I was afraid of like what would happen to me if I like realized new things or whatever. But I don't really think that's it, actually. I think it really genuinely is just like I perceive so much unfinished material in my mind right now that I almost, it seems like greedy or something to want to take more. Like I almost like need, I'm proving to myself first that I can make something really cool out of what I have before I dare to get more or something like that.
It's about portions.
Portion size, yeah, exactly.
Portion size.
I'm not going to go to the buffet and be like, I'll just take all of everything and just carry it out in a giant bucket and then just
your body cannot physically digest.
No, I won't get the benefit of it. I can't absorb it all at once. I need like a trickle of something, and then I need to prove that I can transmute that stuff and then slowly build up confidence of having a higher rate of transmutation, higher rate of processing. Because I mean, the turnaround time of me dealing with new shit has definitely gotten less throughout my life. I've become way more comfortable with the idea of like, oh, it's unexpected. Okay, well, let's act on this. That's probably the fastest way to process something, is like lead with the action part instead of the thinking part. Because the action part's gonna, put you in contact with reality faster than the thinking part. You're going to get more feedback with the action part. This is eminently true in the work that I'm doing, is like sometimes I can sit there and I can think for hours and hours and hours, and I can play stuff out in my mind and be like, like in terms of programming, there's a million paths I can go down, and you can sit there and you can just imagine how every single maybe I should build a program this way. Oh, no, that's not going to work because then that's going to fuck me over in this way in the future, because then it's going to make it harder to do this, But sometimes the best way to do it is just start doing it. And then you go, oh, that doesn't work. And yeah, you have to redo some work, but, you're ultimately going to get there faster. And I feel like that's like a metaphor for your life. Because that's what you're doing in life is, of course I'm over-applying this metaphor because that's what I do every day, but your life is kind of like programming. You are setting up processes, and then you're testing the processes, and you're trying to discover what are the unintended consequences of the processes that you've set up. And, life doesn't give you a handy error message every time. You can easily close your eyes to that, but, try not to. Sometimes it becomes impossible to ignore. Like, I don't know. The reason I've been wanting to smoke filtered cigarettes, for example, is that I've just been coughing. I don't know what it's from. I think it's because just breathing smoke or something. But I'm trying to just respond to that so I can continue to smoke cigarettes.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit, the fruit that stands out against the green background. We're in an intellectual dimension now. We're not in a hunter-gatherer's dimension. We're in a ego intellectual dimension now. But the same evolutionary carrots and sticks processes apply, where the things that turn you on, the things that quicken your thought processes are the ripe fruit. And love is a great way for your unconscious to highlight what feature of your intellectual landscape is ripe for the picking. And it's about the conscious, what's your conscious signal that starts all your unconscious physical dancing? Is it a fear response of running away from something? Or is it a love response of running towards something? Or is it a courage response of walking towards something that's difficult? Two of those are better than the third one.
What's the third one?
Running away from something you're afraid
gotcha. of. Interesting.
Because there's a conscious statement at the start of what starts all those actions that then play themselves out kind of unconsciously. And the conscious start is the spell you're invoking that then colors the kind of dance you then enact.
It's funny. I've been So I've been playing with this. You know how I like axes and quadrants and metaphors and stuff like that. I've been playing with this idea. You know how there's that concept of like the lover, the magician, the warrior, the king. That's that whole thing. Mm-hmm. I've been playing with this idea of mapping those archetypes onto the kind of motivations that I have when I'm trying to like do something. Because I've noticed that from day to day, I'll have different. Various aspects of those things will be more prominent than others. Like
various directions of the 4 quadrants will be more apparent than others.
Yeah, it'll be more apparent in my consciousness at some time. So like if I'm walking to work and I'm trying to identify and then intensify what my basic motivation is.
Okay.
I've noticed that sometimes I feel like the world is beautiful, that people are beautiful, that life is beautiful, the leaves are beautiful, everything is like, has like this passion infused with it kind of. And I'm
Yes.
like, okay, so that's, I could put whatever label on that I want, but the label I have been putting on that is the lover archetype.
Right.
And I've been going, okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to intensify this by listening to some music that speaks to that.
Yeah.
And I get there and I'm like almost crying because it's like, the world is so beautiful, fuck, you know what I mean? And then sometimes other days, I'm like thinking about like, man, fucking the world is 1984. This is some dystopian shit, fuck this shit. Like, no, someone needs to stand up against this. Like, we have to like, fight for fucking freedom or something. Like we can't let ourselves be like, and I'm like, this sounds fucking corny as hell, but like,
no, it doesn't.
That's the war. Okay, yeah, maybe I'm just like not giving this enough credit, but that's the warrior archetype. It's like going like I have power. I'm going to do something about this. I'm not going to like get into this. I'm not going to like just let myself be like, like forced to get a fucking vaccine that I don't want or something, like a fucking injection. You know what I mean? Like fuck that shit. So that's the kind of like. That's just what I'm like latching onto because it's the thing that's most obvious a violation of like, your freedom or whatever at the moment. But it's just that kind of thing. So, and then the other hand, extending this thing, there's like the magician archetype. I've realized that sometimes my motivation is like really not, I'm not feeling courageous. I'm not feeling passionate. I'm feeling fascinated. I'm spellbound. I'm going, man, I love programming. It's so fucking cool to make this thing. It's so intricate. It's magical. It's some wizard shit. I'm gonna go there and it's just fun. I'm just playing with Legos. This is awesome. Like, and so I'll listen to some like something that's just like abstract or just kind of like. And so it's cool how you can intensify those basic energies. And I wonder, what am I? Because every time I use a model or a symbol set to try to understand something, my immediate suspicion is that I'm limiting this by applying that model, because like models have a way of illuminating and limiting at the same time. When you use a symbol in place of something else, it has the benefit of making it more clear, but it has the detriment of kind of collapsing the reality into that symbol. So I'm not saying that the only basic motivations in me or in anyone else are like, passion, fascination, or courage, but those are ones that I've been able to kind of identify and concretize using this image. I don't know where that image comes from, but that's my...
They're simultaneous and they're nested. Like the warrior thing is also tying into your prompt about conflict and positively believing in conflict as a good and creative force.
Yeah.
And what is it that lets you embrace conflict and do the warrior thing really emphatically and well? It's the lover archetype. That is the ability to fucking passionately, sensually enjoy anything, even conflict.
Interesting. So you're proposing a kind of like...
They're nested and simultaneous.
So if they're nested, what's the most central?
The king.
The king is the most central.
That's the definition of that one.
Interesting, but
Is it
so
not?
okay. Well, maybe we're just talking. This is semantics, but I would think if they're nested, the king would be the one that encapsulates them all. So perhaps it's the outer. Like, where do you begin and where do you? Because I think of the king as like where you end, is like the integration of the other three. Like whenever because sometimes if you somehow felt
How is he back in the same spot?
oh the fucking. Maybe there's some more leaves.
He silently drove past to the exact same spot and then started up his noise again. What the fuck is going on?
The government hates leaves.
I'd say the king is like the mystery, is the empty black hole from which your soul comes from the non-physical into the physical. It's also, yes, that idealized, completely individuated, transcendent object of Stuart that is drawing you towards ultimate fulfillment. So yeah, it's encapsulating from the outside, but also it's the spark of God on the inside that is infinite, and the one area of stillness around which the universe orbits. The present moment. You could say the king is the present moment. The present moment being this crossroads, being the one leverage point from which all decisions and actions come out of.
Yeah, I think of the king as kind of like the attitude that I'm okay and you're okay. That like I have faith in myself and other people at the same time. Like that's
a affirmation of existence itself.
Of other people, yeah, of like seeing how
the word yes.
Or yeah, it's like a way of not. It's like giving yourself enough credit that you can afford to give other people credit. I think that's the position of greatest strength that you can.
Hey, that's Rob.
Rob, who's
Yeah.
Rob?
Oh, he's a great dancer,
Nice.
and he's so in shape.
Sick.
I mean, he's probably like 60, or like, I mean, he could literally be 70 by now. I'm sure he's still fucking like.
Pretty soon he's gonna be
ripped.
55. He's gonna start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I guess I just think of the king as like, what is the king doesn't really need to justify decisions or thoughts or whatever, because king knows that he's making the right decision. He's the king. Because so like if you give it's like how there's this thing like if you give yourself enough credit, you don't need to try to use other people as the foil to buttress your own self-image, because it doesn't need any support. And so, yeah, it's like if you have a generosity of spirit to yourself, you can have a generosity of spirit to others.
So a well-developed king archetype creates an experience of self-sufficiency.
Yeah, and has enough to share, and is like overflowing with like that kind of attitude. And I think that is what, when those other archetypes that you have, like if you feel bored, you're going to project boredom onto other people. If you feel insecure, you're going to project threatening stuff onto other people. Or if you feel passionless, you're going to just think that other people are just fucking ugly or something. You're only like, well, like what you say all the time is you can only perceive your own constructions. So the king is kind of like a wealth of those, has like all those tools at your disposal when you're in that state of mind. And I very rarely feel like that, if I'm completely honest. I don't think I'm at that level yet. Most of the time, I pick one or two, mainly one. I'll just have like a single vibe, and I'll just go like, I'm gonna like.
Well, I think the king is the word before it's spoken. As soon as it takes form, it is more readily falling into one of the other three.
In the beginning was the Word.
And the Word was God. But as soon as it becomes a word with letters that sounds like God, that's now the Son. That's now the physical progeny of something that is now different, because as soon as you put something out, the thing that put it out is now different and changed and transformed by putting that thing out. So the king, is forever unmanifest, forever manifesting into new organizations of lover, magician, warrior.
I'm gonna grab my jacket real quick.
Oh yeah. Well, we took a week off, and that was really cool. It's cool this is the unconscious thing. Like, letting things return to the unconscious is crucial to replenishing the value of it. It's like taking a break from coffee, theoretically making your relationship with coffee more fruitful. It's cool to be able to see my podcast that I'm making with you from a great distance. Yes, that thing way over there that has very little to do with my moment right now.
Yeah.
And yet is completely healthy and vibrant and valuable. And I can go back to that later, but in this moment of taking a week to breathe, it's just in the unconscious dreaming of its future forms that it may take.
I want to read that quote about conflicts that I had from a few days ago.
Okay.
This is from a lady named Marion Milner, who apparently was a smart lady, I guess. Never heard of her before this, but she said, "Conflict is essential to human life, whether between different aspects of oneself, between oneself and the environment, between different individuals, or between different groups. It follows that the aim of healthy living is not the direct elimination of conflict, which is possible only by forcible suppression of one or the other of its antagonistic components."
Excuse me.
That was also in the quote. But the toleration of it, the capacity to bear the tensions of doubt and all the unsatisfied needs, and the willingness to hold judgment in suspense until finer and finer solutions can be discovered, which integrate more and more claims of both sides. It is the psychologist's job to make possible the acceptance of such an idea, so that the richness of the varieties of experience, whether within the limit or within the unit of a single personality or in the wider unit of the group, can come to expression. I would substitute individual for psychologist. I don't know the context in which she was speaking, but I think it still holds true. The main thrust of this that I kind of resonated with was I was relating this to sort of the artistic value of conflict, and the kind of just being kind of grateful for it.
Conflicts coming up require the innovating mode, the engineering mode, the artistic mode. Because if you come to a conflict, you come to a place where two pieces have not been integrated yet. Is it one? Is it the other? It's neither. It's a future yet to be created third option that is bigger than both and integrates both. And that third option does not exist yet, and that's where the human mind comes in. And so finding a conflict is going, oh great, somewhere for me to be productive and valuable.
Yeah, it means you're on the right track in some sense. Like if you're experiencing conflict but you're surviving, it means you're doing something.
It means you're growing. Yeah,
it means something's happening to you. The worst thing that can happen is that just nothing ever happens to you. We kind of overestimate the threat of things happening and underestimate the threat of things not happening. because it's much easier to see things that happen than it is to see things that don't happen, because that requires imagination. And I don't know, I guess I think that most of my life has been built through the integration of conflict, of obstacles I've run up against. And sometimes I have moments where I'm like, fuck, I can't believe I have to deal with this right now. But then, at the same time, it's like, well, would I really want to just read a book where nothing happened? Going with this idea that your life is viewing your life through the lens of literature, it makes a good story. And
and we need to be inside a story to be excited to wake up in the morning.
We are inside of a story. There's no getting out of it. We just, whether we admit it or not. Yeah, our life absolutely is a story. Stories are modeled after the texture of conscious experience. They're a reflection of it. Your life is actually even more of a story than a story is. A story is a facsimile of your actual life,
I've been so much in conflict with myself that it's still very much inside of it. It's not it's not a thing I can be glad about right now.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just a thing I am choosing to say yes to because I understand that something is happening now.
That's maybe why I brought that quote up, maybe, is that because I know you're in a tremendous conflict right now.
Yes, and it's not the love affair that is the fruiting body of my pain and conflict is not it. It's the fact that my king archetype took me there, and my deepest sense of navigation took me there and is holding me here. And so it's not this love affair that's in conflict with me or hurt me. It's my own fucking center that's hurt me. It's conflict and pain and adversity.
Adversariality.
Coming up from inside. And so I'm just tired and in pain and using the warrior energy to walk up to it and fuck with it proactively. And I understand that something is happening now on a greater magnitude than anything has happened in my life before. Compared to this event that I'm inside of right now, nothing has happened in my life. At this magnitude of events, this is the first fucking event.
You're getting somewhere.
So a story is now being written.
Yeah.
Or at least a story of a grander scale than I've ever been able to consciously encapsulate before.
The lead is being buried.
Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead says, he's an architect, and he says, I believe in conflict.
He's a character in The Fountainhead?
He's the hero of The Fountainhead. And he's talking to his love interest. And her story is of being in direct conflict with him the entire book. And she tries to destroy him, tries to destroy his career for most of the book. And she's conscious of being in love with him while she's doing it. And she doesn't even quite understand why Howard Rourke is allowing and encouraging her rebellion against existence. But in a monologue he gives to her when he's setting her free to continue trying to destroy him, he says, I believe in conflict, and nothing of us can exist if we don't go into this root conflict of you and I first, And like whatever is going to last of our relationship is going to be built on how we handle this basic conflict. And there's something, it's implied, and I don't know enough about architecture, that it's an architectural metaphor about stresses and tensions, and stability is a matter of tensions balanced against each other. Do you know anything more about physics than I do?
Sure, but it wouldn't contribute anything to this, so yeah. Metastatic equilibrium, maybe.
Well, like the human mind like pushes against the gravity of Mother Nature to build a skyscraper, to get a rocket to the moon. It's like you have to consciously reckon with and respect and honor gravity's action trying to pull you to the ground. If you ignore gravity, you'll never get a rocket to the moon. You have to account for it and fight against it to get there.
Well, what you're doing is you're trading potential, or you're trading kinetic energy for potential energy, or vice versa. But
what is energy? Like
energy.
Ayn Rand, she fucking loves conflict, and she defines electricity as tension.
This brings me back to the idea that anything's true if you take it metaphorically enough. But that's there's, I think, like in order to get to a state of higher potential energy in your life, you have to either start with it or you have to input that energy into the system somehow. I think experiences have a way of like some experiences are the release of potential energy that was within you. Like you have like an example of that would be like a midlife crisis. Like somebody just,
It releases energy.
Yeah, there was some stored psychic energy, some psychic tension, something, and then something happened which caused a cascade, and now suddenly that energy is released and you're in action because you you unleash the dam, right? And then I think there's like an opposite process though, which is kind of like a little more, like it's a little harder to create. It takes more effort, or it takes more time to create that potential energy than it does to release it. You can release it all at once, but if you build up, if you kind of like work towards a goal, for instance, I think that almost creates like an accumulation of potential energy within you that you kind of have more control over because you know how it got there and you know where it is, and you're charging your battery basically. I think that's like something about. I think that's where that energy metaphor is interesting. But what you're saying about like to the moon thing, it's like, well, from a cultural standpoint, the fact that people went to the moon was like a kind of banking of potential energy in the cultural consciousness, in the sense that
it puts new possibilities.
Yeah, people point to that all the time. They go like, well, if we can put a man on the moon, then, see? So that little thing right there reveals that turn of phrase reveals that people are using that event in the cultural consciousness as a source of potentiality for thinking that other things are possible and making other things possible.
And similarly, if I can thrive through this midlife crisis, then I can do anything.
Well, isn't this technically an eighth life, or no, of 1/12?
333.
This is a 1/10 life crisis for you, because you're going to live to be 300.
Hopefully, like, the scope, like, and the scale changes, so, like, my next one is not at 66, but at, like, 90.
Right.
Yeah, it's this this againstness, like it's not just the world coming against me, although that's happening too. It's my own center is rising up against me, and the energy released by accepting and grappling proactively and positively with that. One result of that is that, like, I'm a man now. I can consciously know that I'm a man now.
A man is defined by the shit he's gone through.
By what he's done with the shit, I'd say.
That's one way of looking at it.
And
I'm not saying it's wrong.
So I didn't consciously know if I was a man or not, and if I could run a household or not, if I could provide for myself and others or not, if I could be a stable rock amidst a sea of chaos or not. And now I know I can in all those cases. But it's not something I'm grateful for.
Interesting.
Like, it's, this pain. It's fucking painful.
Yeah.
The Lady Jessica tells the old Bene Gesserit of the beginning of Dune, she asks Lady Jessica, "Do you hate me, child?" As a teaching moment for Paul, because Paul's listening. And the Lady Jessica says, "I both love and hate you.
Yeah.
I hate you for the things I must never forget of my training. I love you because that's just the basic fact."
Yeah, what a great scene. Okay, I'm going to jump on the Dune criticism train a little bit right now. I said I wasn't going to. I felt like they severely undervalued that scene in the movie. That scene was nothing like it could have been. That scene seemed like it was just there because, of course, it had to be there because it's an iconic scene. But it seemed like that scene
What was missing? What would you have done?
Well, it was just too short. They didn't have for example, it didn't include that line that you just said, for one. And I think, they didn't really, it felt disconnected from the rest of the movie, and it didn't connect to the future in the way I would have liked to see.
That's right.
I would have liked to seen some sort of
That's
linkage, between his, that should have been a perfect moment to sort of bury the lead or whatever, to where later on.
That's what it was supposed to be,
and where later on he thinks back to that and somehow, and they just didn't.
And they didn't, because it's a terrible fucking movie. Watch this movie again, and you will see past all the flashing lights to the hollow fucking corpse that it really is.
The Dragonfly helicopter was fucking dope.
Sure.
You're like, yes it was, but...
There were plenty of really cool things. I will outwardly say that some of the most beautiful images I've ever seen in cinema were in that movie. Like the cascading Sidewinder missiles off the attack ship, just slowly cascading hundreds of different missiles from a ship down to the city that it was attacking. That was quite beautiful. That movie was fucking terrible. It was a stupid goddamn fucking movie. I hate it so much. I was telling Jade the next night that I am, this trial of conflict I'm undergoing, I am in the trial of the Gom Jabbar right now. That is what I'm undergoing.
Trying to figure out if you're human or not.
Yes, having to show, not even the world, I don't fucking care if the world knows it or not. I must show myself. You can only perceive your own constructions. I must show myself that I am a human and not an animal.
Yeah.
And I have the example of all the other facsimiles of this archetype of experience to compare to how I'm doing it now. I was an animal before, and this is now a human doing the same thing.
Interesting. I wonder if I'm still an animal.
You are in categories that have not yet made themselves. What the fuck? How do I say that with English?
I don't think you need to. I think I know what you're getting at.
This is a podcast. We need to. That's the fucking point.
Why do we need to talk at all? Can we just? We all know what we're gonna say.
2 hours of eye gazing, featuring Stuart and Alex.
You know, I wouldn't have ever believed that would be a thing, but you know what?
It's a thing.
ASMR is a thing. So that's just a bunch of people whispering nonsense.
You are an animal in automated behaviors that have not yet revealed themselves to be insufficient for your intentions. As your intentions develop through the future, automated animal behaviors will reveal themselves as insufficient, and they will have to be accepted by your conscious mind when the unconscious puts them forward as things not good enough anymore, and you will then have to act on them as a free-willed human mind and confront the determinism of your programming in that new way, and consciously articulate through action and thought, married together, the new way that you're going to behave in that category from now on.
Yeah, there's been a couple things that I can pretty confidently say that I'm a human, certain categories in. There've been things like that in my life.
Like what?
So I can't talk about that, honestly, to be honest. But I know what you're getting at. Yeah,
and like if I extend it to sex, like the sex life, there's a great dance there where like you get better and better and better at it, and more conscious of like how to please yourself, how to please your partner, how to like, but then it like that conscious articulation of the physical dance of union then has to be surrendered back to an unconscious dance, or it becomes this stagnant
caricature kind of thing.
Stagnant caricature, stale thing that like, I understand this, so I don't have to like be active in it.
Dude, our entire world, society, culture writ large has caricatured sex to the point where it's probably not as good as it could be. I feel like we've over objectified it.
Well, there's zero articulation of what a long-term sexual relationship can do for sex.
I think there's not even a good articulation of what a short-term one can do for it either.
Sure.
I think it sucks. I think it's like just a severe lack of imagination and like a lack of like interesting thoughts. It's just so commoditized or something. And I don't even mean that like...
I remember reading books about Tantra, and its thing was making a West versus East value judgment in a couple different books that I've skimmed through on the subject of, we apply a Western analytical mind aesthetic of if we're fucking, we have a goal and we're drawing a straight line from not orgasm to orgasm.
Having abstract sex.
and then once orgasm is reached, the experience is complete. And the tantric understanding is it's about the journey, not the destination. And so maybe you reach orgasm, maybe you don't. And maybe you just call it as a really healthy experience, and orgasm didn't come for either party, but it just like put more nutrition in the well of sensuality, and maybe an orgasm will happen later. But you just like collapse it down to one thing. If every time you have sex you must come, then you're collapsing sex into something that can be understood and contained. And it is not something that as soon as you understand it, it escapes you and becomes something more than that.
Yeah. Well, and you're trying to draw like a boundary around what sex is, because I don't know, sex is like it's sort of integrated with your whole life in a way.
Sure.
Like your general, it's like a large part of your energy in any given, like at least in your creative energy. For me,
Yes.
it's drawing from the same fucking well.
It is.
So it's, yeah, I don't know. It's like almost like I don't know. I think it's kind of, sex is actually weirdly one of those things that, even as objectified as it is, I think it's actually less objectified than almost everything else in our culture, which is even more objectified. Like, at least sex has like this, and I say like at least like it's a good thing or something, but it happens to have this kind of like social like barrier to like talking about it and media about it and stuff, and so that has like somewhat protected it from being like super defined and parcelized and controlled. But at the same time, that's happening now through like it's just being converted to money, basically, and a lot is being lost in that process. I think it's being converted into a symbol by whatever like socially and legally acceptable means it can. It's being pushed into that thing by this like vast transformative process of whatever's happening in the world right now. Is we're like mining the reserves of humanity from ourselves to try to commodify them. And sexuality is kind of like a bastion of humanity in some sense, because it has become, it's resistant to politicization because it's very deeply personal and stuff, and so it's close to you, in the same way that like maybe like very other things that are very like sensuous are kind of like everyone, there's so much common ground there that it's hard to like for people to be divided and polarized and stuff. But I don't know. You can see it happening, though. I hope people, speak for myself. I've lately been trying to take a more, like, sacred view of sex, to be honest.
It is sacred.
Yeah.
It is sacred.
Just for my own good. Like, not out of any sense of, like, virtue or propriety, but just out of, like, a sense of, like, this probably seems like something I don't want to fucking short circuit.
There's a conscious statement about the human condition that can be derived from the phenomenon of sex, where our bodies are built to create pleasure from within. Your body is built to do that, and your ability to do that is what makes all of life possible. It is what forms the gateway through which consciousness enters the physical dimension. Every human is a new god of infinite potential, and pleasure is what makes that god emerge. And so that puts pleasure as the central statement of physical existence.
That sounds satanic as fuck.
God gave it to us.
Yeah. I've had this idea before that maybe I've had this, I don't know if this is true, so I'm not necessarily arguing this, but it is a thought that had occurred to me that sex is somehow like the thing that makes life bearable or something, that like, fuck, like what is all this shit, like all the things that can happen to you. You could get cancer, you could die, you could get like murdered, someone that you love is probably gonna die, or maybe you're gonna die and you have to live with the knowledge that they're gonna have to live with you dying, whatever. Like there's all this like potential for like pain in life, but there's also the potential for sex.
Those are surface inconsequentials compared to the existential infinite value of what sex is and what it creates.
Well, it's almost like it's like a proxy for the life in general. It's like life once removed or something like that. It's like the counterpart to the process of existing. It's like the, I'm thinking of this in extremely metaphysical terms, not as a way to try to like euphemize the situation, but just to like understand it more. Yeah, there's like something about, like, sex is kind of like meta life in a way. That there's like a relationship between people is like it's the beginning of life. There's a potentiality there.
I think nature and animals have the prioritizations in the right order. They are firmly based in sensuality and sex and existence as pleasure and reaching roots towards the nutrients. Is it morally correct for my roots to reach this really tasty bit of dirt? No, a tree doesn't ask that. It knows that it's good. And it knows that reaching that goodness makes leaves, which makes birds able to make their own lives in the branches of the leaves. The animals that heal themselves not by applying medicine or going to the doctor, they just understand the wound to be a surface inconsequential while they go on focusing on the orgasmic moving spheres of physical existence.
Yeah,
that's
like,
what has their focus.
There's like this old school like line that like the dumb beasts, they're ruled by the passions of the flesh. Look at them out in the field just fucking each other. It's like, we totally aren't doing that also. We are pure beings. Like, no, it's sophisticated. You're doing it in a very sophisticated way and you're in denial. But we know what you're doing. We know what you're doing. Just be honest. There's
Cool.
something, you know what though? To make this super complicated and paradoxical, there's something that I like about the fact that people deny and struggle with their own sexuality. That seems like a weird thing to say, but like part of what's good about sex is that it's fucked up. And I just don't know I don't know how to reconcile that. This is speaking directly to that unconscious thing, is that there's something compelling and makes me happy about the fact that there is this fucked up thing in people.
Well, it's
that
conflict.
we just I just like it. It's conflict for its own sake or something. I don't know. I don't know. I think something would be lost if everyone was perfectly comfortable and just like, oh, totally out in the open and let's just all sit around and have a huge, just be completely, just no mystery. If you banished all mystery and darkness from sex, it wouldn't be sex. It would be like some kind of, I don't know. There's some value in that dangerous unconscious territory that I think is cool.
Yes, sex should remain dangerous.
And dark and mysterious. There has to be
Yes.
some element of that.
Yes. Yeah, it's conflict, it's integration of opposites by definition.
Wow. No kidding.
And
Quite literally.
It's the body understanding that integrations must be made. You do not want to fuck your cousin. You do not want to fuck your sister. You do not want to fuck your mother. There has to be enough of a difference of genes for a magnetism to emerge of like, oh, these are oppositions. There's a physical mode that wants to integrate those things into a third better thing that's better than both of those opposing pieces.
That's really fascinating that sex is the physical manifestation of the integration of opposites.
Yeah.
That's strikingly interesting. It's weird how like even physical matter has organized itself according to that principle.
Yeah. At least locally.
Yeah. Second Law of Thermodynamics has entered the chat. No, it's true.
Well, I'm feeling complete.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
Feeling integrated. No homo.